It was 1:24 a.m. when the front door clicked shut, breaking the heavy silence of the dark bedroom where I had been lying awake for hours. I pretended to sleep, my gaze locked on the ceiling as her heels clicked against the hardwood floor, like a slow countdown to impact. Jessica walked in wearing a low-cut black silk dress, smelling strongly of another man's cologne. Her lipstick was slightly smeared at the edge, her blonde hair unraveled just enough to betray what she had been doing, and yet she smiled as if nothing were wrong. When she casually greeted me, as if coming home from a normal night out, I sat up in silence, completely shattered by the sheer audacity of her act, while she peeled off her heels, wiped her lipstick in the mirror, and hummed a tune. She began bragging about a dinner at a high-end Italian restaurant, but mid-sentence, she froze for a split second when she caught my eye in the mirror's reflection. Lowering my voice to a level I barely recognized, I asked if she had been with her boss, Logan, again. She laughed nervously, brushing it off as a simple team dinner and calling me paranoid for questioning her late return in that dress. Without saying a word, I reached into my hoodie pocket, pulled out her phone, which she had carelessly left unlocked on the kitchen counter earlier, and tossed it onto the bed. The screen glowed in the dark with her last exchange with Logan, where she promised to wear the black dress he liked, and told him she could not wait to taste him again. The fake smile instantly vanished from her face, replaced by an icy, defensive glare. Instead of offering an apology or showing a shred of guilt, she accused me of spying on her and claimed she would not have strayed if I had not been so boring in bed. The coldness in her voice severed the last thread of affection I had for her. She showed zero remorse, walking straight into the bathroom and slamming the door behind her. Standing alone in the dark, surrounded by 7 years of memories, shared laughter, and framed wedding photos, my heartbreak hardened into a quiet, deliberate resolve. She had taken me for a fool, but I was done playing the victim in her drama. I spent the rest of the night awake, listening to the hum of the bathroom fan and her faint singing, while analyzing every red flag I had previously overlooked. The sudden secrecy around her phone, the unannounced work trips, and the lie about spending a weekend with her sister Amanda, who had accidentally revealed Jessica had not visited in weeks, all slotted into place with sickening clarity. When she finally emerged around 3:12 a.m. and mockingly asked if I was going to mope all night like a child, I handed her a thick black folder containing printouts of text logs and surveillance photos provided by a private investigator I had hired 3 weeks prior. Her hands trembled as she flipped through the pages, but her panic rapidly turned into spiteful amusement. She mocked me for hiring a spy, claiming I was too weak to handle the truth, and admitted she only went with Logan because he made her feel desired rather than trapped in a mundane routine. Refusing to engage in a screaming match, I watched her grab a pillow and storm into the guest room, slamming the door. The revelation did not shatter my self-worth. It simply exposed her insatiable need for toxic validation. I knew right then that my next move would not involve dramatic outbursts, but a calculated, permanent exit from her life. By sunrise, I had systematically packed half her belongings into neat boxes, leaving behind only what she had brought into the marriage, while leaving our wedding album untouched on the shelf like a tombstone. When she came downstairs at 9 a.m., in her silk robe, sipping coffee, as if she still held all the power, she was stunned to see her suitcases lined up by the front door. She tried to downplay the betrayal, advising me to grow up and accept that monogamy fails, but I calmly pointed out that I had already frozen our joint bank accounts, cancelled her credit cards, and instructed my lawyer to file the divorce papers immediately. Her composure shattered into pure rage, and to prove she did not need me, she immediately called Logan on speakerphone to pick her up. However, the moment she told him I was kicking her out, Logan abruptly pulled back, claiming he was busy and refusing to get involved in the drama before hanging up on her. As her phone bounced off the floor and cracked, all her arrogant confidence vanished in 30 seconds, leaving her looking small, helpless, and terrified. Coldly reminding her that she was nothing more than a temporary thrill to him, I informed her that an Uber was 5 minutes away, watching silently as she dragged her bags out the door without another word. When the door clicked shut, the silence of the empty house hit me, and I sank into a chair as tears silently spilled down my face. I was not crying for the woman who had just left, but for the loss of the future I thought we were building together, and the painful realization that 7 years of marriage had been built on a lie. Taking down our anniversary photo from the mantel, I tore it straight through her smiling face and threw it in the trash. Moments later, her sister Amanda texted to ask what had happened. I simply told her to ask Jessica about Logan, prompting an immediate, awkward silence on the other end. By mid-afternoon, a knock at the door revealed Jessica standing on the porch in a hoodie and leggings, completely stripped of her previous glamour and arrogance. She claimed she needed to retrieve her laptop, walking into the office like a ghost of her former self while avoiding all eye contact. As she reached for the door to leave, she paused, looking at me with a desperate crack in her mask, as if wanting to rewrite history or offer an explanation. I did not give her the satisfaction. I told her to just go, locking the door behind her for good before opening the windows to clear the air and cooking dinner for myself in absolute peace. That night, the silence was no longer heavy, it was liberating. Eating a quiet meal alone, I realized how exhausting it had been to walk on eggshells around her moods, her sudden absences, and her hidden secrets. Checking my phone later, I noticed she had posted a vague social media update, framing herself as the victim, claiming some people only love what they can control. I simply closed the app, took a hot shower to wash away the stress, and finally slept deeply without being haunted by phantom footsteps or quiet late-night phone calls in the hallway. At midnight, the doorbell rang again, but it was not Jessica. It was Logan, standing on my porch, looking visibly rattled beneath his slicked-back hair and designer clothes. Stepping outside, I gave him 30 seconds to speak, and he immediately tried to distance himself, claiming Jessica meant nothing to him and that he had cut her off the moment she talked about leaving me. I told him he was no longer part of the story, warning him never to set foot on my property again, and watched as he slunk back to his car and drove off into the night. In the days that followed, the transition from constant anxiety to complete freedom became my new reality. Every corner of the house that once felt tainted by her deception began to feel like mine again. I spent hours clearing out the remaining odds and ends, stripping away any lingering trace of her presence. The empty closets and bare shelves were not reminders of loss, but open spaces for a fresh start. I stopped checking my phone for notifications, stopped wondering where she was sleeping, and stopped replaying her excuses in my head. The shock had worn off, leaving behind a sharp, uncluttered perspective on what my life was supposed to be. The following weeks brought a steady sense of clarity as I officially signed the divorce papers at my attorney's office, ensuring a clean break with no alimony or prolonged legal battles. With every passing day, the physical soreness from early morning workouts replaced the emotional deadweight of the past. When I eventually found a folded, discarded journal entry in the guest room, where Jessica had questioned her own capacity for genuine love, I finally understood that her betrayal was never a reflection of my worth, but a result of her own internal emptiness. Lighting a match to the paper, I let the ashes carry away the last remnant of her influence. A month later, I ran into a mutual friend at a local coffee shop who cautiously brought up Jessica's name, mentioning that her life had quickly unraveled after the divorce. Logan had completely cut ties with her at work to protect his own reputation, leaving her isolated, living in a small rented apartment and scrambling to rebuild the image she had so carefully maintained. Hearing the news didn't bring me joy or bitterness. It just felt like the natural conclusion to a long, messy storm. I nodded politely, changed the subject, and walked out into the afternoon sun, knowing that I had completely reclaimed my peace, my self-respect, and my future.